The day I was supposed to sell my grandfather's land, I stood at the edge of what my family called the worthless 40 acres of seemingly empty Kansas farmland that hadn't grown a decent crop in decades. To them, it was just another failed piece of the family farm. To me, it was everything. My name is James Cooper, and for the past 2 years, I've been building something beneath this land that would change everything. Not that my Uncle Robert or my cousins knew that. They thought I was just another failed engineer, too sentimental to let go of Grandpa's worthless inheritance. Look who finally showed up. Uncle Robert's voice boomed across the field. He stood by his shiny new pickup truck, dressed like he was heading to a business meeting rather than standing in the middle of farmland, ready to sign away this dust bowl and join the real world. I forced a smile, remembering Grandpa's last words to me. Patience, Jimmy. Sometimes the best revenge is letting them think they've won. 2 years earlier, I'd inherited this piece of land while my uncle and cousins got the valuable parts of the farm. The working fields, the equipment, the buildings. They'd laughed when I asked for this particular 40 acres, seeing it as proof that I was just as impractical as Grandpa had been. What they didn't know was that Grandpa and I had planned this years ago, back when I was still studying geological engineering at MIT. He'd seen something in this land that others had missed. Something that would make it perfect for what I had in mind. The lawyers are waiting in town. Uncle Robert continued, checking his Rolex. $5 million, Jimmy, more than this Westland is worth, and you know it. Behind him, my cousins Brad and Tyler smirked. They'd spent the last 2 years trying to pressure me into selling, watching with amusement as I wasted time out here with my surveying equipment and mysterious deliveries. Just need to check one last thing, I said, walking toward what looked like an old storm cellar, the only visible structure on the property. Meet you at the lawyer's office in an hour. Don't try to back out now, Brad warned. We've got buyers ready to move. Major distribution company. They think maybe they can use it for warehouse space. I bit back a laugh, if they only knew what was already under their feet. As their truck pulled away, kicking up dust, I entered the storm cellar and pressed my palm against a hidden scanner. The back wall slid aside silently, revealing a modern elevator. 2 years of secret construction, funded by private investors who understood my vision, had transformed this worthless land into something extraordinary. The elevator descended 6 stories underground, opening into a vast facility that would have made my uncle's eyes pop out of his head. Climate-controlled rooms stretched for acres, filled with server racks and cooling systems. This wasn't just a data center, it was the future of sustainable computing. All systems still running perfectly. Sarah Chen, my chief operations officer, reported as I entered the main control room. The geothermal cooling system is exceeding expectations. We're using 70% less energy than a conventional data center. I nodded, watching the monitors that showed every aspect of our underground operation. The facility used the natural cooling properties of deep earth combined with the latest in geothermal technology to create the world's most energy-efficient data center. Major tech companies were already lining up to rent space, attracted by the combination of security and sustainability. The Department of Defense representatives are on their way, Sarah continued. They're very interested in the security implications of our underground design. Perfect timing, I smiled. How long until the property transfer triggers the public registration? About an hour after you sign. Everything's filed and ready. The moment they record the sale, our permits and licenses become public record. I checked my watch. The lawyers would be waiting, along with my uncle and cousins, eager to finally get their hands on what they thought was worthless land. They had no idea they were about to become the laughingstock of the business world. Has the press release been prepared? Sarah handed me a tablet. Ready to go. Revolutionary underground data center opens in Kansas. World's most energy-efficient computing facility valued at $2 billion. $2 billion. That's what analysts estimated the facility was worth, between the advanced technology, the perfect location, and the long-term contracts we'd already secured. My uncle was about to sell his rights to the surface land for $5 million, thinking he was taking advantage of my sentimentality. The elevator hummed as I returned to the surface. Through the high-tech security cameras, I watched my uncle's truck returning, probably wondering why I was late to the signing. "Where have you been?" he demanded as I approached the lawyer's office in town. "Don't tell me you're having second thoughts about selling this worthless piece off." No second thoughts, I cut him off, entering the office. Let's get this done. The next hour was a blur of paperwork and signatures. My uncle and cousins could barely contain their glee as they watched me sign away what they thought was just empty land. The buyers, a shell company I created, were represented by proxy, everything handled through lawyers. Well, that's that, Uncle Robert said as the final papers were signed. Maybe now you can get a real job instead of playing around with your little surveys and experiments. I checked my phone. The property transfer had been recorded. Any minute now. Right on cue, every phone in the room started buzzing. News alerts, messages, emails, all sharing the same shocking announcement about the revolutionary underground facility that had just gone public. Uncle Robert's face turned white as he read the headlines. $2 billion? Turns out it wasn't so worthless after all, I said calmly. Amazing what you can build underground with 2 years and the right vision. By the way, you might want to turn on the business news. I hear they're doing a special report on the future of sustainable computing. Brad grabbed his phone, frantically scrolling. This is impossible. We've been watching that land. There's nothing there. Nothing you could see, I corrected. But then, you never did look beyond the surface, did you? Too busy laughing at Grandpa's worthless inheritance to notice the geological surveys, the construction equipment, the power lines being laid. You can't do this, Tyler sputtered. We just sold our rights to the surface land, yes, for exactly what you thought it was worth. The underground facility. That belongs to Cooper Sustainable Technologies, my company. Built with private investment and fully permitted 2 years ago. Check the records. They're all public now. Uncle Robert slumped in his chair, realization dawning. Your grandfather, he knew about this possibility, didn't he? That's why he left you this particular piece of land. I smiled, remembering long conversations with Grandpa about geology, sustainable energy, and the future of technology. He knew the land's real value wasn't in what you could grow on top of it. But then he always said some people can only see what's right in front of them. Walking out of the lawyer's office, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. 2 years of secrecy, of enduring their mockery while building something revolutionary, had finally paid off. But this was just the beginning. The facility wasn't just about proving my family wrong. It was about changing how the world thought about sustainable technology. And now finally, I could show everyone what we built. Sarah was waiting in the car outside, ready for the press conference. I looked back at the office where my uncle and cousins were still staring at their phones in shock. Ready. It's time to show the world what you can build on worthless land. The press conference was held right on the property, with hundreds of reporters gathered around what appeared to be nothing more than an old storm cellar in an empty field. News helicopters circled overhead, trying to spot any sign of the revolutionary facility that had suddenly appeared in their business alerts. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, standing at a podium with Sarah beside me. Welcome to the future of sustainable computing. As if on cue, the ground began to vibrate slightly. Behind me, sections of the earth slowly separated, revealing massive glass panels set into the ground. Through them, reporters could see the first level of our facility, a stunning array of servers and cooling systems, all bathed in soft blue light. What you're seeing is just the surface. Quite literally, I continued. Cooper Sustainable Technologies has built the world's first underground geothermal data center, using the Earth's natural cooling properties to create the most energy-efficient computing facility ever designed. The crowd gasped as more panels opened, offering different views into the facility. Reporters frantically snapped photos while tech bloggers live-streamed everything. But how did you keep this secret? Someone shouted. This much construction. I smiled. Sometimes the best place to hide something is in plain sight. Every permit was filed legally, every construction phase documented. We just let people see what they expected to see, a worthless piece of land where nothing interesting could possibly be happening. From the back of the crowd, I spotted Uncle Robert and my cousins, their faces a mix of shock and growing comprehension. They'd spent 2 years watching trucks come and go, seeing construction equipment at work, but had been so convinced the land was worthless that they'd never questioned what was really happening. Mr. Cooper, a reporter from the Wall Street Journal, stepped forward. Sources say you've already secured contracts with major tech companies and possibly the Department of Defense. Can you confirm? Before I could answer, A convoy of black SUVs pulled up. Men in suits emerged, led by General Sarah Matthews of the Pentagon Cybersecurity Division. "We can confirm that," the general announced, joining me at the podium. "The Department of Defense has signed a 10-year contract with Cooper Sustainable Technologies. The facility's unique design offers unprecedented security advantages, and its sustainability metrics align perfectly with our green energy initiatives." The announcement sent shockwaves through the crowd. Pentagon contracts were the holy grail of tech infrastructure, nearly impossible to get, but guaranteed long-term stability once secured. "The future of computing isn't just about processing power," I continued. "It's about sustainability, security, and thinking differently about how we use our resources. Sometimes what looks like worthless land to some people is actually the perfect foundation for innovation." After the press conference, as reporters were being given carefully controlled tours of the upper levels, Uncle Robert approached me. He'd lost his usual swagger, looking older and somehow deflated. "Jimmy," he said quietly, "your grandfather, he knew about this potential, didn't he? That's why he specifically left you this piece of land?" I nodded. He understood the geology, the natural cooling properties of the limestone formations under the property. He knew it was perfect for what I wanted to build. But he also knew something else. "What's that?" "That you'd never see its value. You'd be so focused on traditional farming, so sure that land was only good for what you could grow on it, that you'd never look deeper." Brad and Tyler joined their father, both looking uncomfortable. "But all those trucks, the construction," Brad began. "You saw exactly what you expected to see," I said. "Some failed engineer playing with his inheritance, probably wasting time and money on another crazy scheme. Just like you thought Grandpa was crazy for keeping this worthless piece of land all those years." "We were wrong," Tyler admitted, surprising me. "About the land, about you, about everything." Sarah approached with another group of visitors, CEOs from major tech companies eager to tour the facility that was revolutionizing their industry. "Excuse me," I told my family. "I have some real business to attend to." The next few months transformed everything. Cooper Sustainable Technologies went public, with our initial stock offering breaking records for a tech infrastructure company. The facility's innovation earned awards for environmental design and energy efficiency. More importantly, it sparked a revolution in how people thought about sustainable technology. Other companies began exploring underground facilities, looking for ways to use natural geology to their advantage. Uncle Robert tried to contest the land sale, of course. His lawyers argued that he hadn't known of the facility's existence when he sold his surface rights. But every permit, every document, every phase of construction had been legally filed and publicly available. He just never bothered to look. "Your cousin's quite something," I overheard General Matthews telling Brad at a facility tour 6 months later. "He saw potential where everyone else saw worthless land. That's the kind of vision we need in this country." Brad's face reddened. "Yeah, we kind of missed that." The facility expanded over the next year, adding new levels and innovations. We bought surrounding properties, paying fair market value, unlike my uncle's attempted lowball purchase of my land, and built a sustainable technology campus that transformed the region. One afternoon, as I stood in the main control room watching our systems operate at peak efficiency, Sarah brought me a familiar-looking box. "Found this in the old storm cellar," she said. "Thought you might want it." Inside was my grandfather's old geological survey kit, the one he used to first identify the unique properties of this land. With it was a letter I'd never seen before, dated just before his death. "Dear Jimmy, by now you've probably built something amazing on that worthless 40 acres. I knew you would, not just because you understood the science, but because you understood something more important. That true value isn't always visible on the surface. Your uncle and cousins will probably be angry when they realize what they missed. That's natural. But remember what I taught you. Success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. I left you that land not just because it was perfect for your vision, but because you were the only one who ever looked beyond its surface value. You saw possibilities where others saw limitations. Build something that matters, Jimmy, something that will last. And remember, sometimes the best revenge isn't in rubbing their noses in their mistakes, but in showing them a better way forward. Love, Grandpa." I looked up from the letter to see Uncle Robert standing in the doorway of the control room. He aged in the past year, the family's embarrassment over missing such an obvious opportunity weighing heavily on him. Your grandfather was a smart man, he said softly. I just never understood his kind of smart. Would you like a tour? I offered. A real one this time, not just the parts we show the press. He nodded, and for the next hour, I showed him everything. The innovative cooling systems, the geothermal generators, the security features that had impressed the Pentagon. For the first time, he actually listened. We were so wrong, he said finally, watching the servers hum efficiently in their underground home. Not just about the land, but about you. About everything. It's not about being wrong or right, I told him, remembering Grandpa's letter. It's about being willing to see possibilities. Sometimes they're hiding right under our feet. The facility continues to grow and innovate. We're developing new technologies, pushing the boundaries of sustainable computing. The Worthless 40 has become a symbol of innovation in the tech world. Brad and Tyler eventually came to work for the company, starting in entry-level positions and working their way up. They learned to see beyond the surface, to understand that true value isn't always in what's immediately visible. Uncle Robert retired from farming, but he often visits the facility, proudly telling visitors about his innovative nephew who saw possibility in worthless land. He's finally understood what Grandpa knew all along, that sometimes the best investments are in people who see things differently. Last week, a young engineer asked me for advice after a facility tour. Everyone says my ideas about sustainable technology are impractical, she said. They tell me to stick to conventional methods. I showed her Grandpa's old geological survey kit, still kept in my office as a reminder of where everything started. Let them think that, I told her. Sometimes the best innovations come from ideas others dismiss as worthless. Just remember to get all your permits filed properly and maybe keep a few secrets until you're ready to show the world what you've built. She smiled, understanding the lesson that had taken my family so long to learn. True value isn't always visible on the surface, and sometimes the most worthless things turn out to be priceless. As I write this from my office deep underground, watching the most advanced computing facility in the world operate with the efficiency Grandpa helped me envision, I think about how far we've come from that worthless piece of land. The future of sustainable technology continues to evolve, but one lesson remains constant. Never underestimate the value of looking deeper, of seeing possibility where others see nothing worth keeping. After all, sometimes the greatest innovations are built on the very things others dismiss as worthless. You just have to be willing to dig a little deeper to find them.